It's time once again for the PSATS Roulette. Let's spin the wheel and see what comes up. Will it be funny? Will it be weird? Will it be G-rated? We have absolutely no idea.
Hurricane season is upon us, and this one is shaping up to be one of the most active in recent years. Throw in COVID-19 into the mix, and townships are in for a double whammy of challenges as they prepare. Joining me for a special National Preparedness Month segment of PSATS Roulette is Randy Padfield, Director of the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency. Welcome, Director Padfield.
Thank you, Briette. It's great to be here, and it's great to be able to discuss, especially this topic. It's very timely.
So natural disasters, in this case, hurricanes, tropical storms, and flooding are one thing, but when you pair it in with a highly contagious disease like COVID, it compounds with the problem. So what are the new challenges that are presented to townships?
So there are a lot of things to take into consideration, but specifically evacuations and shelters. First of all, we need to understand that individuals may be hesitant to evacuate because when they think of a shelter, they think of a very congregate setting. So our concern is that we want to make sure that they feel comfortable in evacuating. Take a look at sheltering opportunities. We're probably going to look towards more non-congregate sheltering where it's individualized, such as hotels and motels, as opposed to congregate sheltering, which we're kind of used to during hurricanes and other disasters. And the other thing is emphasis on people being able to stay with other family members or friends in that type of environment, so they're not necessarily exposed to the virus. And it's really key for people to understand that even if they have to evacuate and they have to go into a shelter, many of the organizations that are involved with sheltering now have adapted their plans to be able to do the appropriate things in a COVID type environment or pandemic environment.
So with that, what steps should townships be taking?
It's really for the townships to really take a look at what is their continuity of operations plan. We've all been, faced with being able to do operations or conduct operations in a COVID environment and kind of disconnected or virtual, and that's going to continue during a disaster. So making sure that their base plan is set and they've taken everything into consideration is really key so they can provide the services needed to their township residents. Preparedness messaging to the citizens, as we discussed, is really key. So they have that ahead of time and they understand what they need to do and how COVID has affected the operations and how they've adapted the operations, and really going back through and updating their plans and procedures for pandemic operations to limit the potential for spread of the virus. And it really gets into just about everything that we do.
Yeah, so now obviously townships have to be prepared, but residents also have to be ready for any type of disaster too. So what new items should they add to their prior emergency evacuation kits that they have created?
And we really want them to have the other things that they need, especially if they're faced with a position where they can't social distance appropriately. So things such as having an adequate supply of hand sanitizer, sanitizing wipes, facial coverings, are going to be essential, especially if they're in a tighter environment than normal. But they also may want to consider multiple masks. If they have to evacuate to maybe a family or a friend's house, there may be vulnerable populations there, and you may need to be able to provide them with a mask while you're in that environment to be able to limit the potential of transmission of the virus to those vulnerable populations and people.
So yeah, so the next thing is communication is so important, but not everyone has like internet in Pennsylvania, especially with lack of internet or reliable internet. So how should township officials be managing this challenge? Is there any type of alert system that townships should be looking into? And is there also possible funding available for those assistance in communities?
So the first thing I would suggest is people take a look at really what their needs happen to be and develop a tiered or a multi-pronged approach to messaging and think about the most likely scenarios that they're going to run into. So in Pennsylvania, we run into flash flooding and flooding on a regular basis. So you really want to make sure you're prepared to be able to handle those types of scenarios. And then take a look at the distribution pathways. So there's email, there's text, there's voice, there's reverse 911. And really make an educated decision on, does the township need to have a messaging system and what is the use of that messaging system? And then also coordinate with your county. Your county has tremendous capability nowadays, depending on where you're at and which county you're in. They have the ability to be able to do emergency and potentially non-emergency messaging as well. So you don't want to have a duplicative process if they can provide that service to you. But the other thing is, don't forget about the stuff that is out there currently that is either no or low cost, such as making sure you have a robust social media presence. Usually people will have their cell phones charged, so if the cell phone towers are up, they can receive those messages, but there may be times where that's not going to work. So really having that multi-tiered approach and have multiple pathways to reach those people is really important.
All right, Director, so I'm going to switch gears now and talk about the aftermath of any type of disaster. Obviously, with COVID-19, it has changed traditional damage assessment process. So could you explain what's new?
The challenge is it used to be, in person, going out, interviewing the residents, those types of things. And what we're looking at is doing this now in a disconnected or a virtual environment to the degree possible and leveraging technology to the maximum extent. So we're really taking a look at making sure that we can collect that information in a timely fashion, but also using things such as our GIS capabilities and making sure that we have the information that if we're taking pictures, they're geo-referenced. And we have the ability to be able to plot them in a GIS system or on a map. We have the data available to us using things such as crowdsourced damage reporting. I know some of the counties have been working on this where people can kind of self-report, and then leveraging UAVs and those types of technologies or drones to be able to go out and map impacted areas in a very short period of time. And that provides some good visual when it comes to what the level of impact happens to be those jurisdictions. And it really supports that process and it really hastens the recovery.
So finally, Director, if township officials have any type of questions about the pandemic or any type of emergency preparedness, where should they go for help?
They should really work with their emergency manager locally in the jurisdiction, and then they usually have the conduit to the county emergency manager, and they can get their questions answered there. And then we have regional offices. We have 3 of them across the state, and usually the day-to-day operations of our agency work through the regional offices.
All right, so Director Padfield, that's all the time I had for today. So thank you again for this valuable information.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Like I said, it's great to be here, especially when we talk about preparedness. Usually we think about it during hurricane season and usually in September. So it's great to be here, not in the throes of a disaster, to discuss these types of things.
Be sure to tune in next week for Training Tuesday, a snapshot of upcoming PSATS workshops, webinars, and forums. And remember, if you like what you're seeing, follow the association's YouTube channel and other social media pages for more Township video news content.